This is Switched On.
Hello and welcome back to the Switched On podcast. This is your host, Akshay Koti Bhaskar, and for those of you who are new, this podcast is dedicated to those who find themselves struggling with the ominous task of choosing a career. Regardless of whether you're one of those people or not, and if you would like to ease the process of figuring out what career is truly right for you, or simply gain a more knowledgeable and informed perspective, look no further. Today we have a very special guest coming from Sanofi, which is a major healthcare company which is engaged in the discovery, development, manufacturing, and marketing of a wide range of medicines and vaccines. In the last half-century, the corporation has grown into one of the world's leading healthcare companies, with a footprint extending to 90 countries. In fact, Sanofi was the first worldwide supplier of the injectable polio vaccine, as well as the first influenza, meningitis, and rabies vaccines. Ms. Preeti Futnani is the General Manager of Vaccines at Sanofi India. As a GM, she effectively acts as a scaled-down CEO, overseeing the daily operations of her department, and it is her responsibility to ensure that strategic goals are met by setting operational policies, creating and maintaining budgets, managing employees, and more. Ms. Futnani has over 2 decades of experience in delivering growth and transformation that spans several therapeutic areas, geographies, and functions within healthcare and finance. A strong proponent of people development, Ms. Futnani is passionate about nurturing talent and stays highly invested in building the capabilities of the teams that she leads. She graduated as a chartered accountant and marketing postgrad from the Indian School of Business, the ISB, with specialization in strategic marketing and analytical finance. Welcome, Ms. Futnani, and thank you very much for being here today on this podcast. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here, Akshay. I'm really excited, and what a great initiative that you have going on for young minds like you. So ask away.
Thank you. Firstly, Ms. Futnani, I think the listeners are probably most curious as to why you do what you do. How did you initially become interested in this field of profession?
Right, very interesting question. I think much like you, when I was, a little bit older than you, I was thinking of, what are the various avenues available?
Sure.
My background's actually finance. So I'm a chartered accountant, and then I went and got a business degree because I actually wanted to do something different from just traditional finance. While I was in business school, we had lots of different options, different industries. And the one thing that really spoke to me was the pharmaceutical industry for a number of reasons. One is, as we're growing older, we see that people have longer lifespans. There's new technology in medicines, and of course, people get better when they take medicines. Right. So I think when I was in my early 20s, when I was presented with something like that, which had a mix of everything, marketing, finance, health, and technology, it was something that really spoke to me. And we had a couple of companies who came on campus and offered us various roles. So I think that's how I actually got into this. Yeah. But this was definitely the industry that I wanted to go for when I heard about most things.
Okay. But would you say it was planned always from the start, or was it kind of like a...
Definitely not. I have changed my mind multiple times while growing up. So at about your age, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And then, of course, I got into finance as well. So there's no right answer as such. Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes it comes to you. I guess I was lucky that it happened when it did.
Okay. And can you tell us a bit about yourself, such as your interests, skills, and what do you like to do outside of work?
Outside of work, I do lots of little things. So I actually do a fairly intense role. And when I'm at work, it requires more than 100% of my energy. So I think when I'm outside of work, or first I make sure that I do have enough time outside of work to actually de-stress a little bit. So I work out, I do yoga, I love swimming. A couple of years ago, I participated in a a triathlon. I've run a half marathon before. So I think anything that keeps me healthy, I keep trying different things when it comes to doing things outside of work. I've learned to play tennis recently. I'm not very good at it, but yeah, I'm going to try my hand in paddle as well. So
wow, okay.
So yeah, lots of little things.
Yeah.
I've recently started cycling as well.
Okay. And speaking of de-stressing, how would you say, like, how intensive is your career? And would you say that it's like at a point where it's too much for you sometimes?
Sometimes it is, and we deal with providing vaccines to the Indian population, and we provide vaccines to the government of India, which then uses these vaccines for the general population, under the universal immunization scheme, or we sell to the private market as well, where your pediatrician in India would be using our vaccines. It's very operationally intensive, right? Because we're talking about 1.4 billion people. We sell in multiple cities and something always goes wrong. So it's quite intense to make sure that everything is running like clockwork. And if it doesn't and there's an issue and it is big enough, then I'm asked to come and sort it out. As an organization, we have goals in India as well. So it's important that, we ensure that we reach those goals. So that's quite intensive. And at the end of the day, the most important asset we have are people who work for the organization, who work for me. It's really important that they stay motivated as well. So while there are lots of ups and downs, and while it gets really stressful at times, I think what I use for myself is if it does get too much, I just take a moment out. Something goes wrong all the time. So actually I'm used to it. And over the years, I've just learned to not panic, sit back and say, okay, there is always a problem. What is the solution? And then work towards that, usually with everyone that I work with. Okay.
And in addition, how do you strike a balance between your personal life and your career? And do you have any advice for maintaining this balance?
So that bit has not always been easy. I think when you start your career early on, and this is traditional. I'm Gen X, by the way, so very different from from this new generation. And what I love about this new generation is everything is you don't live to work. And I think that's a great philosophy. I actually take a lot of that away now that I'm in my 40s. In my 20s, I think the balance was probably a little bit less than what I've learned to do today. But mostly I look at, kids like you and my children, and of course my cousins who are much, much younger than me and in their 20s, on how to strike that balance. I don't know if I have that perfectly. I'm not sure anybody has it, but it's a learning process. While you want something, you may not always get it. Sometimes things get really stressful. Sometimes you're expected to deliver. I think it's figuring out that what you're doing at the end of the day actually matters and is meaningful, and then the sort of hard work comes along, as you go along. I think it is really important to make sure that people don't give up on their careers too easily. So, you've done some pretty amazing stuff in your life, Akshay, and you've obviously sat for competitive exams, which most people don't clear. So you understand the value of hard work and grit. I think my advice going forward is what we see today is the younger generation gets a bit dejected a bit too quickly. If you stick around long enough, give it time. Everything is not instant gratification. If you stick around long enough, you will find your calling. And if it still doesn't work out after you've given yourself some time, it's always a good question to ask yourself, saying, should I be doing something else?
Okay. And can you provide a brief overview of the role you play within the organization? And what are the main responsibilities and tasks you handle on a daily basis?
So as someone working in the healthcare industry and vaccines specifically, it's a very operational and strategic role. So part of my role is zooming out and setting the strategy for the organization,
Sure.
setting our objectives, setting the goals for the organization. And then the other part of it is, how do we actually implement this through policies? How do we make sure that it's actually working? So a lot of my audit and finance background really helps in looking at that. I work for a company which is quite old, actually, so a lot of policies are already in place, and it's my job to make sure that what we have at a global level actually works at a local level, or do we need to do something a little bit differently?
Sure.
I think it's making sure everything that we're doing and anticipating any risks that we see, and we have a lot of risks when it comes to supply, right? We're talking about vaccines which require a cold chain. Let's say something comes to India and it's out of the fridge for more than a few hours.
Yeah.
How do we decide whether this vaccine is fit for human consumption or not, right?
Yeah.
So there's all of these little things to make sure that any excursion that happens, any exceptions that happen, how do we deal with it? I think another big part of my role is people management. At the end of the day, you get results when people do their roles. So one of my biggest roles is to make sure that my organization is satisfied, they're motivated, and they're coming to work every day with a purpose and actually doing something.
Yeah.
In Sanofi, world over, we have different businesses. I run the vaccines business, but we have another business that has consumer healthcare. We have another business that does specialty care medication, which is like cancer medications,
Sure.
etc. And then we have a general medicine business, which is things like diabetes and cardiovascular medicine. So at a country level, we also have a country council, and we have thousands of people working in the organization. As part of the country council, one of my big roles is I lead two big roles. One is diversity, equity, and inclusion is very close to my heart. So I lead that for the organization. When it comes to gender balance, when it comes to experience, when it comes to ability, or when it comes to pride, I lead all of those things within the organization to make sure that it's an inclusive organization and putting together policies around it.
Okay.
The other thing I also do as part of the country council is we're a highly regulated industry as well. I'm sure when you Google pharmaceutical industries, there's a lot of stuff that in the past has not been good either. As a global organization, it's very important that we do business ethically. So one of my big roles in the organization is actually leading and championing ethics and business integrity as well. So I do that for the organization as well. So while we have an ethics and business integrity team, as one of the general managers, I champion it across the organization so that every time someone's asked the question saying, this is a little bit gray, which side of the line should I be on?
Sure.
We always do the right thing that benefits patients and also is not breaking any laws.
Okay. And what are the biggest challenges that you usually face in your role, and how do you overcome those?
So I work in India. Something goes wrong almost daily because it's so highly complex. I think one of the things I've really appreciated post-COVID, going back to India, is just the sheer resilience of people. I mean, you've been to Bombay before. Yeah. People travel 2-3 hours to come to work by public transport. There's the rains, etc. So it's incredible watching just how strong and resilient everyone is and doing their jobs. It's making sure everything is working, and that's not always easy. That's very challenging. When things are not going right, it's easy to lose your temper. It's easy to be under a lot of pressure. I think sometimes when things are not going okay, or if we're not making our goals, there's a lot of pressure, not just from me, but from the above country organization as well, right? How do you manage situations like that?
Right.
I think Sanofi's also had a big leadership change over the last 5 years, and we're really transforming the organization both at a global global and local level. Transformation doesn't come without certain people. It doesn't work out for everybody. How do you manage that in the right way? So how do you do the right things for employees who may not be benefiting from this? How do you help the employees who may be losing their jobs because of a massive change that you're doing? All of that are things that I have to deal with, carefully consider, and take really big, difficult decisions on how we manage that change that the organization is going. So I think that's probably one of the most difficult and challenging things I have to do.
And how do you usually overcome them then?
I think it's experience, right? Over 20 years, I've also made a lot of mistakes and may have not done it the best way possible. So over time, over experience, over managing many people, I've also worked across different geographies. So, I've dealt with different cultures. I've also dealt with different bosses who've done it in different ways. Some people have done it really well, some people not so well. My role is to say, with everything that I've learned and what the organization ethos is and what my personal, where my personal moral compass is, what do we need to do? And I take advice from lots of people. I don't have all of the answers. So I will take advice from my human resources business partner. I will take advice from previous bosses that I've worked for. I'm very clear that I never have all of the answers. My job is to connect the dots, but not tell people what to do. The others decide that these are the solutions, and I'll pick the one which makes the most sense. And that's usually how I do things.
Okay. And on the flip side, are there any particular aspects of your job that you find especially rewarding or fulfilling?
I think it's extremely rewarding, right? Post-COVID specifically, you can see the role of what vaccines do in this world. We were able to manage COVID because we have vaccines, but our memories are short. We have diseases that we've completely eradicated, or diseases that you probably in your lifetime have never seen. India, for example, is one of the countries where polio is completely, we've been polio-free since 2014 in India. Us, your mom and dad, and while we were growing up, I've known at least 3 or 4 people who've suffered from polio and who've actually survived it. And it's pretty debilitating. All of us have smallpox vaccines. We have a mark to prove it. You guys don't have. You don't have that vaccine because, again, as a world, we managed to eradicate it because of vaccines. Today, when I look at India and Sanofi's global mission, we've been the sole supplier to India and the Indian government for polio for many years. And only recently have we had someone else supplying polio to the government. One out of 2 children in India are on a Sanofi vaccine. So I think those are the great things that I take away, saying that you're not even getting to a disease stage. We protect the babies of the country, which I feel really great about at the end of the day.
You must feel very proud as well, I guess.
I feel super, super proud that, this is the mission that the company does. And we've really helped the country a lot in terms of many diseases. So that's what keeps me going when things get difficult.
Can you describe any common misconceptions or myths about your job or industry that students may have, and perhaps debunk any?
Some of them may be myths, some of them may be misconception. I think generally, and we don't have great examples in the pharma world, right? Sure. When you talk about, especially with globalization, especially with where the world is headed, it's really tough with certain careers. So if you look at banking and finance, if you look at pharmaceutical, and if you look at the tobacco industry, they're considered the worst.
They're hated.
They're usually hated because it's it's the big bad wolf, and they're trying to take everything away. Is Is there some truth to it? Absolutely. There are companies that do business quite badly, and even our own industry over the years, there have been some PR nightmares, right? So it's not always an easy balance. There are leaders who've taken the choice to pursue profits despite the cost.
Sure.
So I'm not going to say it's extremely pretty either, but I think at least the company that I work for, and I would really urge, because I know you have a follow-on question on what advice people should, or what research or what tools you would have to look at this industry. I think one of the things about Sanofi, and that's the reason I work for these guys, is everything they do, even difficult decisions, they do it with compassion.
Okay.
There is never a single country that we've withdrawn our vaccines from if there is another alternative that is available in the country. We will continue to not make profits and supply the vaccine to the country if there is no other alternative. So I think those are the things that I take heart from. But is the industry very clean? Certainly not. There are lots of companies that don't follow business ethics. There are lots of companies that do business pretty badly. So it's how do you find that balance? And I think a lot of that responsibility lies with me. So far, based on what guidance I get from above country and what I'm doing in the country, I feel comfortable enough with my moral compass. The day it doesn't work, I think I'll question myself to figure out whether I should continue doing this or not.
And if there are so many companies that maybe not be the ideal mix of positive enforcement, how easy is it to find a company such as yours that is positively moving?
It's honestly, it's not easy, because sometimes it doesn't just depend on, it depends on the country that you're operating in. It depends on the leadership of the company, and it depends on, what the global policies of the company are. So, is there a straightforward answer? No, but I think what you are doing is really good. You're asking all the right questions. So I would say if someone really wanted to know, go pick 5 people from different pharmaceutical companies, both local companies in the country that you're based in or a global company, and ask these questions and see where does the moral compass of this company lie. Do your Google searches and see what's in the news about these companies as well, and that'll give you a really good idea of, is this somewhere I want to be in or not? Sure.
And for students wishing to apply for a job in your industry, what career and educational paths do you recommend? And such as what degree should they attain?
So it's actually quite broad in the industry, right? Because when you work for the healthcare industry, you don't need just one skill. It's anything from my background, which is very commercial, to a medic's background. So if you're a doctor, there's a lot of scientific work that goes into any communication that we do for medications, to pharmacists who might be selling the medication, to people who work in finance who are just helping us manage our balance sheets in the company. We have supply chain partners. We have people who manage supply for the company. We have people who are in research and development. We have people who are in quality. So, it's a very broad spectrum, right from engineering to nutrition to finance to business to economics. Absolutely everything has a job within the pharmaceutical industry, because it doesn't take one skill to run the company. It takes multiple skills.
So you can take many routes to get there.
Absolutely, you can take many routes. It depends on where your passion is. If you like chemistry or biology, or you want to go into research, there's a role. If you're in finance, there's a role. If you've done a business degree, there's a role. If you're a pharmacist, there's a role. So actually, it's one of those industries where most people can find something they can do.
Okay. And with the increasing emphasis on sustainability and social responsibility, how is the pharmaceutical industry adapting?
I'm not sure everybody is adapting too well, and this is actually a very big agenda for Sanofi. It's a very big agenda for our current CEO, and it's one of the biggest promises we make to the shareholders. So if you look on the Sanofi global local website, sustainability is very, very important. So where we're able to manage better packaging so that there's less wastage, we do it. Where we're able to control waste management, we do it. I think absolutely all of the affiliates have a green agenda. So whether it's should we be in a green building, to do we have plastic water bottles or do we have filters where we can get water from, all of that is a big, big agenda for the company. Corporate social responsibility is also big on our agenda. So there's a lot of work we do in making sure that countries that don't have access to medication, we provide access to basic medication in those countries. We do education on diseases in different countries. And actually, interestingly, in India, we're a listed company. All listed companies have to keep aside a percentage of their profits to do corporate social responsibility. So, both from a sustainability as well as CSR, we have pretty big agendas within the company.
Okay. And you highlighted the COVID-19 pandemic earlier. How would you say the industry has changed and adapted due to that pandemic?
I think the one thing the industry has realized is they need to be far more agile in how to deal with a crisis.
Sure.
I think, and based on how quickly, so vaccines traditionally, we've never, it usually takes years to develop a vaccine. I think what the pandemic has taught us is that if we are in a crisis mode, there is a way to do things faster, but it may not always be the best, right? While, yes, on balance, vaccines did save us, there have been a lot of side effects, and there has been a talk about that also. So it's remembering that there are risks that we take when there is a global crisis, but also making sure that we protect ourselves before the next pandemic comes along.
Sure.
We do enough research to realize what are the trends globally, and of course, take benefit of the new technology that's available to get better medications much, much faster. AI is going to play a very big role in healthcare and medication management very soon. How quickly are the companies going to figure it out? Is everybody on the same page and the same pace? No. Are there risks involved with both approaches? Yes. How are we going to balance it out? I think only time will tell.
Okay. And speaking of AI, how do you see the new technological advancements affecting the medical landscape?
Quite significantly. So AI is, again, from a company point of view, it's actually very big on Sanofi's agenda. It's how are we moving along with AI to make sure that wherever possible, it can help us in every step of the way, whether it's in research or development, whether it's in supply chain management, or it's in the way we commercialize, or it's in the way we market our medications. There's application for that throughout. So I would say technology plays a very big role in healthcare. If you look at it already, there are surgeries being done by automated machines, and they're far more precise than human hands. But does that mean AI is completely taking over? No. You need, I think there is a balance that is coming. It will probably disrupt first and then go into balancing it. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but it is very, very important, and it's coming sooner than we expect.
Okay.
So a very relevant skill to acquire, I would say.
In your experience, how crucial would you say networking is within the pharmaceutical field? And what strategies can individuals employ to build meaningful connections that enhance their career prospects?
Right. So I think networking is a life skill you need, not just in the pharmaceutical industry, no matter what you're doing. people form snap judgments very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think no matter what field you're in, no matter what career you're pursuing, networking is quite important. Especially if you're in front-facing roles, client servicing roles, etc. It's a life skill that you absolutely need to have. In terms of what are some of the strategies that you should use, I'm actually going to look at someone like you who I've actually seen grow up, and I think you're doing a really good job. You put yourself out there, you ask all the bold questions. Usually, even with adults around, as a child, you would speak to absolutely anyone, and I think that's what people your age should be encouraged to do. Ask questions, introduce yourself well, be curious, and continue to network, whether that's within your school, with your teachers, when you're trying to seek admission, and really just everywhere.
Okay. And in addition, do you recommend your field of work to students? And in the future, do you think it is a market that will grow or decline?
Definitely going to grow.
Yeah.
I think that's probably established, especially post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I would definitely recommend students to look at this industry. Like I said, it's one of those industries that requires every bit of skill, and you can have impact no matter what skill you have. So. If, again, medicine is your calling, or if you've done medicine and perhaps you don't want to be a doctor anymore after 10 or 15 years, or you've done engineering and you want to do something specific with medications management or finance, like I said, there's room for everybody. I definitely encourage all budding students to look at this industry and at least try it out if you don't know where you're going. Like I said, just because you do something for a few years doesn't mean you can't change later.
Right.
I've done that, and I'm the biggest example of that.
And if you were to start your career over again, is there anything that you would change? And would you stay in the same sector?
I think I would, at least for a period of time. But having said that, never say never, right? Even though I'm doing something now in my 40s, I might decide to do something completely different in my 50s. So I think I'm not sure. I think it would depend on if the circumstances were the same, I would probably do the same thing. If my environment was different, who knows? I would have done something completely different.
Okay. And are internships or projects something that you would recommend for students to gain some practical experience in your sector? Do you think it is a good opportunity to learn more about your industry?
100%. Actually, most business schools, while they're still doing their business administration, we take a lot of interns from various organizations. So I would really encourage everyone to do an internship, because that's a great way to learn about the industry and see if it's something that interests you for the future. So I would definitely encourage that.
Okay. And lastly, do you think you could share any resources or organizations that students can explore to learn more about your industry?
Definitely. The first thing I would suggest is actually go through the websites of various companies. If you do a quick search on just healthcare or pharmaceutical companies, most big companies have a lot about their corporate ethos, but also about what their hiring strategies are and what skills they're looking for. It's a great way to actually figure out, is this a skill you have? Is this something that you want to do? And then, of course, do exactly what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Speak to people within your network. I think most companies, even on their website, probably have a place where you can send inquiries as, someone who's potentially looking for a role, and most of them actually respond back as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Futnani. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Akshay, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. No worries.
Well, that's all we have for today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you once again to Ms. Futnani for agreeing to be part of this podcast. And until next time, this is the Switched On Podcast.